Hey everybody, this is Chad Hoffman. I am going to present to you today about some data for our acceleration class. I'm primarily going to focus on my class, but I think we can all take this and apply it to our classes in general. So I'm going to kind of walk you through that data and what we ended with this year for our end of year school year data. So first of all, just a little demographics about Alexandria High School. We have 550 students in grades 9 through 12. 79% of those are Caucasian, 14% are African American, 5% are Hispanic, and then we have 2% of other. So our acceleration period at Alexandria High School may be set up differently from across the county. So our senior students were placed alphabetically to complete coursework towards college, career, and military ready for graduation purposes. So they were completing certification classes and things of that nature, but they were placed with those teachers alphabetically. For grades 9 through 11, they were placed in groups based on their Scantron data. And that's the data that we're going to focus on today. So Scantron is an assessment that the students take. It's an interim assessment. So primarily in Calhoun County schools, we're supposed to take it 3 times a year, but this year we at Alexandria High School took this assessment 4 times. So we took a beginning of year assessment, and then you're going to see in the PowerPoint, I labeled it fall and winter, and then end of year. So we have 4 interim assessments that we base these groups on. And students were either based below grade level, on grade level, or above grade level with that data. So for my acceleration class, this is what the data looks like on our spreadsheet. And you may be sitting there thinking, what does all this mean? So we're going to start, we're going to kind of break it down and talk about what each section means and how it builds on the other. So first of all, like I said, students took a beginning of year assessment and were placed in groups based on these results. Now, the students you see here are not my students that I began the school year with. So my first group of students were completely different. So if you see the quartiles there are color coded. So to the left on the screen, if the student score on the right is in red, that means they scored in the first quartile. If it's in yellow, it's the second quartile. If it's in green, it's in the third quartile. And if it's in blue, it's in the fourth quartile. Now, blue is the top quartile, so the top 25%. And then you go down. So these students at the beginning of the year were scattered, and you can see their grade level equivalency there for reading. And that's where I've put my focus because I teach English language arts. So my focus was on their reading category. So if you can see, I mean, we had anywhere from a grade level of 2.7 all the way up to above a 9.9. So the students, when they started the school year, were pretty scattered. And in math, you can glance over there and it was the same way. It's kind of all over the place. So what we noticed, though, is that the students did not take this first beginning of year assessment seriously. So as a faculty and staff, we talked and we spoke in our data meetings and things, in our team meetings, in our common planning meetings, and we talked and we discussed and we collaborated and we decided that we needed to take this assessment again and we needed to put a little more weight on it with those students. So that's what we did. So here we have our beginning of year assessment and then our middle of year, our November assessment. You see at the top, I have labeled this as the fall assessment. So students took it in November and they took it more seriously and the groups began to level out. So if you see there, my students range from 8.1 to 8.9, and that's where my group of students resided. Now, my students still were not mine at this point. We regrouped at this point and we reassigned students. So the second group of students I actually had were on the 6th grade reading level. So that was my second group. So my first group of students was completely different. My second group of students was completely different. And then we took a third assessment, and that's the one I call the winter assessment. We took it in February. You're going to see here beginning of year, middle of year, and then you have the middle of year in February, the winter assessment. So my students, when they were placed with me, my group was primarily supposed to be on the 8th grade level between 8.1 to 8.9. So what we did is again, I'm focusing on the reading category. We looked at the students, and from beginning of year to those middle of year assessments, where were they primarily? What grade level? And so that's where I received this group of students for the remainder of the year. So from February until the end of the year in May, we had this same group of students. So we had the first group in September, October, November. Then we got a group in December, and we kept them through February. And then we changed again through May. So we had 3 different groups of students in one school year. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but you can tell we kind of leveled off there in the middle in November, and then in February, it was a little scattered, but we were confident that the students were where they were supposed to be. And so we remediated and provided some curriculum and some supports for them in those classes through the end of the year. So middle of year to end of year, and you see their results changed. I'm going to talk about why in a little while later, but there was so much happens in a secondary school from March to the end of the year. We have to remain focused. We have to stay in the mode. And so here, a majority of my students were juniors. And so they were finished. They may have been going for Career Academy. They may have been involved in baseball, softball, track, which all went the distance in playoffs, with softball going to the state championship. So students may not been entirely invested in this course. This course is an ungraded course. The students do not receive a grade for this class. They go to it. It's a 35-minute class during the day, and trying to keep them engaged and motivated and improving their test scores for this assessment was quite challenging. So here is where we look at the difference and we measure the students' growth. So from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, what I want you to focus is on the far right-hand side. From the beginning of the year, you see, let's take the first student, for example, they grew 252 points, and then they failed 252 in February, so that means they remain the same. But then they grew, so from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, they went down about 100 points on their assessment. And so you can look and go beginning of year to end of year, and what we did is we just summed them. So we took and summed the numbers together, and then to see how they grew or how they didn't. So when I tell you most of my students were 11th graders, you can see there their grades. And so 11th grade down, you see all the 11s there. Those students were adamant that they were either going to go virtual or they were going to come into school after this course, which is third period, took place for the next school year. So they did not even try on this assessment. They told me that. They're like, I didn't try because I'm not coming to school. I'm not coming to this course. It's not graded. It doesn't count towards graduation. It's not a credit. It's not a graduation requirement. So I'm not coming to school until 4th or 5th period. I only have 2 or 3 classes to take. So I'm not coming to school during this course, during this class. So there's no point in me being here. and there's no point in me trying on the end of year assessment. So as much as we can beg, plead, and borrow and try to keep our students engaged and do their best on this interim assessment, which ultimately is a benchmark, it just didn't happen. So that just shows in the data that the juniors there from the end of year assessment, you can see they all declined. There was no improvement there because they didn't really even try. So I just wanted to point that out. There's why there's so much red there. Again, the first two are freshmen, and then you have 5 sophomores there. So we'll talk about how to improve that and our strengths and our weaknesses. So again, I just kind of explained that there, beginning of year. So how those students grew or did not grow during the school year. And then here is the bottom of that. And that's the growth anomaly that I was talking about, is all of those students practically just guessed and moved on. They didn't even try. So overall, you see the growth percentages there at the bottom, 43.75% for reading and 62.5% for math. So overall, the students as a whole grew for that end of year assessment. But I did want to show that, though the juniors really affected, I think if they would have tried and put forth a little more effort, that growth percentage for reading and the overall growth percentage would have changed for that category. So our strengths with this course, with this acceleration class, is Scantron data. So the data, the formatting, it's geared towards standardized testing and the high stakes tests that we take. And the groupings that we had were leveled off. Now, next year is going to be a change for our students because Scantron has gone bankrupt. So now we're going to go to STAR data through our Renaissance programming. So we'll see how that translates. But right now, we took the same assessment, the interim testing was the same assessment. And so therefore, that's a strength because it was the same formatting geared towards our standardized testing. So that's why we believe the groupings leveled off and they were consistent, and we kept them for the majority of the spring semester the same. Now, some weaknesses, this is not ACT related, and our high stakes test in Alabama is the ACT. So all of our juniors take the ACT. This Scantron test was not geared towards the ACT. It gave us no data, gave us no information for preparing our students to take that assessment. The students did not receive a grade for this course. So trying to keep them engaged and motivated and on task was difficult. It isn't a requirement. It's not a course. They don't get a grade for it. And there's no curriculum. So we were giving things to do. And if you had students that were on or above grade level, I specifically was just told, do whatever you like, but just make sure that you're engaging them in ELA content. Just don't do anything that they're doing in class, because I didn't teach 9th and 11th graders. I teach all seniors. So I really had to collaborate and talk to other teachers and find out and not do things that they were doing in class, and to kind of build that up. And then the thing is just professional development. That was a weakness for this. We didn't have proper training, and we were just kind of told to do whatever we saw beneficial to the students. And so that was really not a strength for that course. So our next steps moving forward for this course, and kind of what I want to do with this course in my classroom, we'll see. We are also changing instructional partners next year. That those instructional partners provided us training for this course and really helped us with all the data and collecting it and talking about it, collaborating about it. So our next steps for this course is what I see happening in my classroom for next school year. So I call it Acceleration 2.0, since this will be year 2 of this course have a set curriculum. So I'm going to have a set curriculum for the students to do day in and day out. When we change courses, when we change students, we need to do so with a purpose. So every student, every day. With only having 15 or 16 students, I'm able to meet with them, even if it's 2 or 3 minutes. Okay, I'm going to continue those Monday check-ins. So on Mondays, what I had my students do is do their grade checks. So they would write down, because I don't have these students in class, I'm not able to see their grades in other classes. So I had the students go into their grade book and write down their current grade and what they were missing, what they needed to make up, if they had any zeros, why they had those zeros. And we check that every single Monday. So that's a quick Monday check-in that I did. So again, going back to every student every day having something to do with that set curriculum. And then we're going to improve student progress every week. So if they're not improving, then we need to change what we're doing. So we're just going to build on that and improve student progress every week. My next suggestion campus-wide for this course is to just readjust our students in January. So RTI data shows that we need to keep students in the group for Tier 2 instruction for 8 to 12 weeks. So if we do a beginning of year assessment in late August, early September, and then we keep them in those groups for 8 to 12 weeks, and we do our next interim assessment after Thanksgiving, so the first part of December, we'll get that data, we can gear them up, we can give the students the new groups during finals in December, and then when they come back in January, we will have those new groups. If we wanted to regroup them in March around spring break, it would be possible. But since the ACT is given at the end of March, I don't see that we need to change groups again. So my suggestion is for us to do the beginning of year assessment in August, do the middle of year assessment in the first part of December, gather that data, do any makeups that we have to do, readjust groups, and give those to the students during finals in December, and come back to the new groups in January. We can talk about goal setting and the importance of that, keeping that set curriculum. Then we can do the end of year assessment, the first part of April after the ACT is given at the end of March. And then we can conclude the year and move into next school year after finals in May. And we'll have those 3 assessments, August, December, and April. And then those are our interim assessments, they're benchmarks, and we know where the students need to be. Those are my suggestions. The first 4 I am certainly going to do in my classroom for this class period, and I want to see how that data improves. The 5th suggestion for Acceleration 2.0 is just that campus-wide, and we'll see how that works. And that is my suggestion moving forward. So I hope you enjoyed the presentation. I enjoyed presenting it. I hope you have a great day.